Hey friend, welcome to my podcast, The Fit Soul. I'm your host, Amy Ramsey. In this podcast, we will be discussing soul-filled strategies to unleash your confidence, increase your energy, and all the things healthy lifestyle. If you're a Christian woman who is ready to reach your God-given potential, walk worthy of your calling with abundant joy and energy, girlfriend, you are in the right spot. I mean, you only have one life to live. You might as well maximize it. Buckle in, and thanks for listening.
I am so honored and excited today to introduce to you my new friend, a remarkable woman, Dr. Barbara Lowe. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so glad to be here. Listen, y'all, I just have to tell y'all, Amy has to the side, I don't know if you know this, a pink treadmill. I'm so crushing on her treadmill. So we were just talking about that. So of course I'm about all things pink, and I know we're going to talk about my new book, but as you can see from my background, I tried to actually not wear pink in my shirt so that we would have some contrast here with the Mac screen. But I'm so glad to be with you guys, and we're going to talk about some really cool things that are actually going to help you right where you're at. So stay tuned, and I'm glad to be with you.
We're so honored to have you here. So let me give a more formal introduction. Actually, before I do that, fun story of how we met. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina at the She Speaks conference for Christian speakers and writers. And I found a little table for lunch on the second day, and I saw my girlfriend who I had really connected with, Lindsay Ford. I don't know if you got to meet her. And I saw her hot pink blazer there. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to surprise Lindsay. I'm going to go and sit beside her, and she's getting her lunch. And when she comes back, she's going to be like, oh, it's like, had this whole thing worked out in my mind, right?
Yeah.
And so finally, I was waiting for her, and finally she came down, and it was Dr. Barbara, and it was a divine moment. It was supposed to be. We met and connected, and she told me about this book, and we scheduled the podcast right then,
right there.
The book hadn't even released at this point, but I was so fired up about it. And you guys, you're going to be so blown away by. I've never seen a resource like this. And I'm all about helping you grow spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically. We are an integrative woman. We are not just a physical being. We are physical, we are soul, and we are spirit. And to work as the way that God created us, so we can be all that He's calling us to be. So before we get into this too much, let me introduce her properly. Dr. Barbara is an ordained minister, a licensed psychologist. She is a board certified life coach. She also does EMDR therapy. She does a bunch of other therapies. She's incredibly renowned. And we are honored to have you on the podcast today, the YouTube today, all the things out there. So thank you again for coming and sharing your journey with us, and sharing how to have a whole and healed heart.
Yes. So important. Yeah. The Lord really is seeking and saving the lost parts of our hearts. And we know a lot about the science of healing, but Jesus healed. There's a lot of psychology in the Bible that I would call our indigenous Christian psychology. And I've integrated that in all through the book in some ways that I do think haven't been done before, and I'm super excited about it. And my own method of healing is in the book, and I do trauma intensives. I love working with trauma, and so work with people with all kinds of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress, and how that is kind of how the past is present underneath the surface for those things. And a lot of my method is in the book, so exciting.
Okay. So before we go too in depth into the book, women love beautiful things. This book is beautiful. It's pink. I think it's both of our signature color, apparently.
Yes,
I just turned 50 and had a birthday party, 50 shades of pink.
Oh,
I
I
asked
love
everybody to
that.
wear pink. It was so fun. So I'm all about this, but I have never in my life, I was reviewing the book this morning. I've never in my life seen a book quite like this. It's brilliant. Clearly, you've put a lot of time, effort, energy. I've
Mhm.
never seen the weaving of the scripture, not just scripture and science, but the stories, the QR codes, the resources available. There's a workbook that's a companion
Yes.
to this. I've
Yes. Here's the
never
workbook.
in my life,
So
and
pretty. Look at that.
it's so pretty. That's the thing. Women love beautiful thing. This is absolutely brilliant. Chocked full of resources and ways that you can see yourself. So we're going to be talking about her book, and the name of the book is called Heart Journey: Healing Through Encounters with Jesus and Psychology. So I already stated that Dr. Barbara is an ordained minister, and then she went into all of the gazillion degrees that she has. And she says in this book that this is a Jesus first, and then she backs it up with the psychology. So why don't we start there? What made you want to write this book?
Well, to be honest, God has marked my life for this purpose. I mean, this is just my calling from beginning to end. And I actually have been through a tremendous amount of healing myself. So I am so 100% confident that encounters with Jesus and psychology work. And then I see it over and over and over in my office. But I've been using the Heart Journey and teaching Heart Journey tools in my ministry, especially over COVID. And then the Lord had me pause my ministry. I also have a very big practice. We have about 25 clinicians that work at my practice, and we incorporate faith upon request, right? Because I'm a clinician, and so I'm ethically bound to honor people's self-determination. In my ministry, I'm more straight up Jesus. Hey, I'm a Jesus girl, you know.
Yeah.
So God told me a while ago, God said, you're called to be author, speaker, clinician. But I've been living as clinician, speaker, author. And he is swapping it at this time. And I actually wrote 2 books at one time within 3 months from a course that I had a lot of success with, just people running through it online on their own. And we even have, like, there's a little Facebook tribe around it and everything. I mean, people really healed through it. And the Lord said, I want you to write it in a book. And I kind of upgraded it and added integrated things in a deeper way. But this is what I take people through in ministry. And then also it has a lot of science behind it. So there's a lot of science behind this that actually works to heal those lost parts of our hearts.
Amen. Yes. And yes. And so I want to just pause for just a minute, because there will be some people that might be listening to this right now and think maybe they have some hesitation, or think, oh, is that woo woo? Oh, I don't know if I'm okay with that. And I just want to say, from someone who has overcome a lot of trauma, that therapy was exactly what I needed. And I think that it's wisdom to put yourself in places where you can heal those parts. A lot of people walk around invalidating their emotions, and I was this person not in touch with my emotions, and my world didn't seem right. And I had a lot of narratives that played in my brain. And so if you're listening to this and you're at all thinking, I don't know if that's okay. Yes, 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 yes. And Jesus says it's okay. And that's what she talks about in the book, is that even through the parables, that you can see. I did one of your exercises this morning, even just the one with the mini rooms in my house, or mini rooms.
Mind mansion. Yeah.
Yes, mind mansion. Yeah, so cool. So cool.
Yes. So, God's given us an imagination to think about whatever's pure, whatever's holy, whatever is praiseworthy, etc. Philippians 4:8. And a lot of people are afraid of their imagination, or say, I don't have a good imagination. You know what I say? I'm like, hey, all those worries that you like, they are extravagantly detailed, these worries. You have a great imagination.
That's
You're
true.
just using it the wrong way. And, Jesus will meet us in the kind of the screening room of our mind, so to speak, the screening room of our heart and our mind. And if we, with intention, so the Mind Mansion tool is a tool that I made up. It's based on positive psychology, but really more so the Bible. Jesus the Father says, "In my house are many rooms," and so the king, that's in the kingdom of heaven, and Jesus went to go and prepare a place for us. But He also lives in us, and in our mind mansion, there are many rooms and many spaces that we can go into and think about what is pure and what is lovely and what is holy and what is beautiful and what is good, and that we're not as trapped in our minds as what we feel sometimes. Not only that, we can bring the Lord God Almighty into any of those places. He lives inside of us. So the beginning of the book, I talk about a lot of what I would call stability tools, where we work on tools to regulate our emotions, our nervous system, our mind, our relationships, our behaviors, because we have to regulate those things before, or be able to have tools to regulate them better before we really start welcoming the Lord into those places of unmet needs and traumas where our safety has been pierced.
So good. So good. So good. So we'll come back and talk about some of the tools that are in the book that it's brilliantly written as far as a resource. I'm a coach and I love to be able to provide resources to my audiences so they can get the healing that they need. But let me just ask you a question. What is trauma? How would you define that?
Well, I like to think about trauma. There are two kinds of traumas in my mind, in the way that I describe them in my method, which is unmet needs. That's the one that a lot of us forget about. So unmet needs are often too little for too long, too little acceptance for too long, too little validation of my emotions for too long, too little attention for too long. So, a lot of traumas, we think about shock traumas. Like I've worked with people from car accidents, rapes, molestations, lots of those. Certainly physical abuse, domestic violence, near drownings. So, those are like shock traumas, right? We all know those are traumas. And in those traumas, there are unmet needs too, unmet needs for safety, unmet needs for protection, unmet needs for having someone there tuning to us. But there are these other, and so that's too much too fast, or too much, like too much over too long of a time, or too much too fast. So that's kind of like that shock trauma. But there's also too little for too long. Too little. I have a rich history that God has given me, where I used to be a teacher. I've written curriculum. I understand development really well. And that helps me in working with trauma because I understand what kids need from infancy on up, and we have very specific needs. So interesting how horses are born walking, but humans don't even walk for almost a year, or around about a year. We're so dependent. God made us to be dependent on these parents, and He's entrusted them to meet a lot of our needs. Now, they have a legacy of brokenness all the way back to Adam and Eve. So they don't meet every need, and what we find is. So ladies, and men, we're just going to be really vulnerable here. These cycles, these places where you keep self-sabotaging over and over. What I'm going to propose to you is that if you scroll back on the felt sense that you feel in that cycle, I think you're going to come to a memory where there's either an unmet need or a trauma. And that is the very lost part of your heart that we want to work on through the Heart Journey method.
So rich,
right?
So good. So many nuggets in this. When you talk about trauma, and so we have the kind of I feel like you were explaining it as this is my layman's interpretation, as we have the obvious trauma, but then there's unmet needs over long periods of time, which is still trauma. Yeah. And so as we're thinking about that, what would you consider the stages of healing for trauma?
Well, there's the first stage, which is safety, right? I mean, we don't really want to go right into trauma healing if we are kind of self-harming, and we want to build safety, right? First. So we want to make sure we're safe. But then once we're safe, and the majority of people listening probably are, safe, then we want to build some resilience. So the first stage is really stability. So we build stability skills. So that is where we do the Mind Mansion, or for women, my self-momming tool, which is so powerful, where you learn to actually join with Jesus and allowing him and your most mature part of self, your most nurturing part of self, to reparent those child parts of you. So we have loads and loads in the book. We have loads of these stability skills. Once you begin to have some stability, we want stability because we have this zone, what's called the window of tolerance. And when we bump above it, we kind of feel out of control with either anxiety or sometimes mania, hyper, or can be anger. And when we bump below it, that's when we are in what parasympathetic breaks. And that's when we're going into the collapse, when you just feel numb, when you feel dissociated. And so we want to build skills to help us stay in the window of tolerance and stay regulated, going up and down within the window. Or if we bounce out, which we all do sometimes, we're able to get back in pretty quick. Once we're able to build those stability skills, and that's really the first 4 chapters of the book, then we start moving into memory reconsolidation, which is stage 2. And this is so good, Amy, because for years we thought that some of these patterns that we get stuck in, and even kind of neuroses sometimes, that we were really kind of stuck with those, that psychology kind of thought we can help a little bit, but we're not sure how much. And then around 1994 to 97, there began to be research about memory, where we realized there are times where you can open up memory and bring a change, and even change in emotional learning. And so, a lot of times when we have trauma, it doesn't run through the brain the same way. So, and when we're in trauma, we're kind of in these lower parts and middle parts of our brain. And we lose and when we're outside of the window of tolerance, we lose this access to this higher cortex. This is why we say stupid things when we are really, really mad, or even sometimes really, really anxious. We're actually literally out of our higher cortex, and we're in this very fast but very stupid other part of our brain. Anyway, so we've learned a lot about memory, and what we know now is that what scientists believe is that we can activate a trauma memory. All right. That, first of all, we believe that a lot of our current self-sabotaging patterns and a lot of our pain can come from a lot of our unhelpful pain. I know that there's a pain in suffering for Christ at times. I don't think all pain is bad, but I'm talking about trauma pain. A lot of that pain, we believe, comes from these earlier traumas. And as Christians, we know that there is literally an unseen enemy who's twisting things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's also perception. Perception is always king in trauma work. And so we can open up that memory, and we have 5 hours where it's open. It's open to it's open to being deconstructed and reconstructed in a certain way. And it doesn't mean that we don't remember what happened, but it does mean we can change emotional learning with what's called a prediction error. And I talk about this a little bit in the book, but the book is it's not heady with science, but I talk about it enough so you can understand what's happening. And so with that prediction error, well, when we open up a memory and we're thinking about a memory that happened, like in the story I share about Deborah, her mom slapping her for no good reason. Anyway, so when we open up that memory in Deborah's mind, thinking about her mom slapping her, she's expecting something bad to happen. But if we bring Jesus into that memory, he is the ultimate prediction error, that's what we need to change emotional learning, is a prediction error. So I love bringing Jesus in, and also I love bringing in self and healing our relationship with ourself as we are connected with Jesus. This is not like puffing self up, but and doing some of that self-nurturing while we're connected to Jesus in that memory, that changes emotional learning. And so in the book, what you'll find is we're continually opening up that memory reconsolidation window, changing emotional learning with Christian, like just word of God encounters with Jesus, prediction errors, and then closing it back up. And then the last stage, so we could do that for unmet needs. We do that for traumas. I call it time reversing trauma is what my method calls it. And then we do unburden that we do boundaries. So there's we all struggle with boundaries and setting boundaries, but there's also like a felt sense of boundaries, and we work with that in the book. And so you feel a certain way around.
What does that mean? I don't understand what that means.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I realized when I was saying that, I was like, well, I'm going to need to explain this. Okay. So a lot of times in session, when I have, let me back up a minute. Okay. Boundaries. So Jesus said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And to me, working with so many trauma people who've been through, well, really the human race who's been through unmet needs and some traumas. I mean, you live long enough, this stuff touches you. We often will have our inner yes not match our outer yes.
Yeah.
And our inner no not match our outer no.
Right.
So we have this felt sense, and I talk about this in the book, that literally your brain was constructed to set boundaries. Literally, you can perceive things because of your neurostructures are made for you to perceive and have a certain radar, but we learn to ignore it. If we were molested as children and then we were raped as a teen, I'm sorry if this is a little triggery, but this is real. This is 2 out of 3 women are rape, molested, or assaulted. So this is us, y'all. This is us. Mm-hmm. And so then you have something again happen in your teenage, and then you end up in a marriage with some icky patterns. Like you've learned how to shut down that radar. Mm-hmm. So a felt sense of boundary. And one of the things I love to do, so let's say in my office, I'm standing here, my client's here. And I say, and I pick up a pillow and I say, the pillow is your puppy, your dog. And I'm like, tell me how close you want me to be. And I'll say, how's this? Closer. How's this? Closer. How's this? Closer. How's this? Closer. And then obviously if it's a puppy, they're going to be like all the way. But let's say I bring up best friend from high school who betrayed you. It's so interesting because there's a felt sense, because I'll say, okay, how's this? Okay, closer. How's that? That's good. And I'm like, how did you know that's good? And it's so interesting because they feel it.
Oh, just like intuition.
They feel it, but yet they're often not living that way. So I work not just with that, so we talk about skills with boundaries in the book. We really do, but there's also a like reconnecting to your inner yes and your inner no. The scripture says, let the peace of Christ act like umpire in your heart. That's how what the Greek really says in Colossians 3:16. And a lot of times we're disconnecting from that peace of God and that knowing, and even some of the radar God's put within us. And we're saying we have an inner no, and we're saying an outer yes. Mm-hmm. And so we want to bring all that together.
I love that. I think as women, and I would imagine it's not just women. I work mostly with women, and you can probably answer this, that we are fed protocol. We are taught to be good little girls, polite little girls. I'm here in the South, and you say, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and yes, sir, and no, sir. And we're taught protocol instead of purpose-based living. Like, who does God say that I am? What does God want me to do? And follow that. Instead, we follow a protocol of what our lives should look like. And does this please all of the people in our lives? We're taught to people please from a young age. And then then you feel bad or wrong to say no to something you don't want to, or to the church, volunteering at the church, because that's what good people say yes. And so do you feel like that's more of a female struggle, or that women mostly struggle with, or do you find in your practice that it is actually men and women?
Well, the past is present. So that can be true for a lot of people who have been through, I don't know, we all have our own unique reactions to trauma, but I'm going to say it's more of a female. I mean, this is kind of maybe where our culture is a little dysfunctional, and we're cultured into it. So one of the activities with the QR codes in here, you get access to activities where I'm actually they're meditations on a web page that I'm doing, and so I do a Christian meditation with Jesus with you using your holy imagination, where you spend a day without guilt. Because I call it false guilt, and it is of the enemy. There is a lot of it in our society, and I realize there's a savvy. I mean, I don't really talk about this in the book. There's a savvy to being a woman and being assertive. Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like we can't just like it's
It's a
tricky being a
delicate
woman. It's
Well,
a
it's a
delicate
very
balance.
tricky thing being a woman, and most of the women that like attracts like. So
Uh,
often, ambitious women are attracted to. So you're speaking to the right language, but for a lot of us, we have to break free. We have to break free, and our voice is
yeah.
our vessel, and the enemy. That's what he comes against.
Yes.
If we can feel less than, if we feel small, if we feel like we're not necessary or not important, or like who do we think we are, type of thing, then he is winning. And when God's like, no, your voice is your
Yes.
vessel. You are a mighty warrior. I need you to use it and for kingdom purposes. And so
Yes.
I've got a question for you here. How can, well, actually, I want to say a statement, and then and maybe you can give our listeners a good question to ask themselves. So, dear friend, if you're listening to this, and if there's any part of your life where you feel like you need to be small, you need to
Mhm.
play small, where you're too late, it's too late, you're too old, you've made too many mistakes, that you feel ashamed, or you feel embarrassed, or you feel like you're hiding. If there's any of those things that I just described, and that describes a part of, maybe a part of your heart, or even all of your life, because that was me. I was stuck. I was shackled with shame. I would not open my mouth. I had mastered the art of being visible yet invisible. I looked all put together, going to church, doing all the things, leading things even, and I was suffocating on the inside. And so if I'm speaking to you and you're hearing this, I want you to know God has way more for you, and his goal for you is liberty and freedom. And if there's areas of your life you don't feel free, then I want to encourage you to dive into that, lean into that, because Jesus came to give us abundant life, not just life, abundant life, life to the full. And the enemy is trying to suppress women and Christian women from moving forward. So with that being said, that's my heart. What would you encourage someone who's listening to that and they're like, oh my gosh, she's talking to me. I know what she's
Mhm.
talking about. That's
Yeah.
me. What do you recommend?
Well, first of all, get a couple friends and do the book and the study together, because it's really, you can do it by yourself, but I have group questions in here too, and really we heal together. But the enemy does try to write a narrative on us, whether it's you're too much or you're too little. I really feel like that for me personally, the narrative most of my life has been you're too much. So it's one way or the other. It's just not quite right. But what we want to do is we want to develop those stability skills, and then we want to begin to look at the narrative that the enemies try to write on your life, right? So in the book, we have a chapter called Narrate Your Story. And so we want to look, I believe for every person, there's an assignment from God and there's a counter assignment from the enemy, and you'll find them directly opposed. So we want to look at the narrative from God and the narrative from the enemy. I actually end the book with you defining your life purpose and really launching into your life purpose, because we want you cleaned up and go out there and do that amazing, bombastically
Go.
amazing thing that only you can do.
That's
You're
right.
you're a supernova of God. Like there's never going to be another you. For such a time as this, you were born. And so you want to look at where the enemies literally tried to imprint something false on you and get that off and out of you. And so that's really the book. I can say honestly, the enemy tried to imprint so much rejection and abandonment upon my life, right? But you know what my calling is one time the Lord showed me my calling is to sit in heaps of his goodness and scoop it out on others, right? So my calling is to welcome people into healing, to show people that healing is real. My calling is the exact opposite of the narrative the enemy has tried to put on my life. So we want to get that off. We want to shake off that dust, but it comes systematically. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it. There's a process, and there really, I don't think there is anything out there that really takes people through the healing steps from, it's like pain to purpose journey. Like this. So I'm really excited about this.
Well, you should be really, really proud of what you've done. I will say that for you. It's beautiful. It's resourceful. It's thoughtful. It's thorough. It is a beautiful resource. Like I said, I looked at it for a few minutes this morning, and the more I read, I was like, oh my God. Number one, it's just beautiful. Women love beautiful things. And, so she has built in the books QR code, and so you just do the QR codes and it sends you to meditations and further resources to help you. So if this sounds a little overwhelming, it's absolutely not, because if you just even take part of the book and just get part of it and go through part of it, then you'll find it massively beneficial. But I love having things to help women with their growth. And this is one that I think that all women should have, all Christian women should have. So again, the book is called Heart Journey, Healing Through Encounters with Jesus in Psychology. And there is an accompanying workbook that you're going to want to get to go with this. And I forgot to mention, we have a giveaway. We're going to give away one signed copy of both by Dr. Barbara. So here's how you can enter that. And you can look in the show notes for this as well. Text the number 601-808-5775 and text the word book, and you'll automatically be You'll
be entered into the raffle.
Thank you very much.
For a freebie. We love freebies. Freebie.
And Dr. Barbara, you actually have some free resources for our listeners today. So can you tell us, where do we find you? How can we find you? How can we jump into your ecosystem?
Yes. All right. Well, first of all, let me tell you that I had a very large ministry over COVID, and I paused it. Now I'm rebranding. So I need you guys' help in following me, because I'm just starting a brand new Instagram and TikTok. I mean, it's brand new. So, help me build this, because I want to get the word out. So it's drbarbaraministries.org or Dr. Barbara Ministries. So my website is drbarbaraministries.org. There I have some freebies and information on the book. So, I'm just relaunching my ministry. It's mostly reading material right now. So Dr. Barbara Ministries, at Dr. Barbara Ministries for Instagram and TikTok. So follow me there. I would love that. And then I have 2 freebies. You can go to drbarbaraministries.org and just scroll down to like the second little section, and you'll see some freebies. But 2 of my favorites are, I have a book on rejection and overcoming rejection. Come on, like we need that, right?
Yes.
And these are really short reads with lots of nice art in them. So you go to drbarbaraministries.org/rejection. And then I have one on self-care, and it's not your average self-care book. It's just it's a quick read. It has some spiritual parts in it. And I have some really novel ideas for self-care in there. So you got to go check that one out. Everyone loves the self-care books, and that's drbarbaraministries.org/self-care. So easy.
Amazing. And then we'll also include that her contact information in the show notes, so you can click right on the show notes. Let's go follow her on Instagram, have other people follow her, order her book. And I am so proud of you, my friend. This is an outstanding accomplishment, and I just know it's going to change lives. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Fit Soul podcast, YouTube, all the things. And all right, you guys. So go follow up, order the book, and thank you for joining us. And as always, if you like what you've heard, if you found some value, would you please share this, shoot it to your story, tag me, tag Dr. Barbara Ministries. Let us know, share it with a friend. One of my favorite things to do is when I find a podcast that I love or something I love on YouTube is I like to connect with other people. And that's just a great opportunity to encourage someone. So if you found this encouraging, hit it, save it, copy, paste it, and then share it with 3 friends. All right, y'all, that's it. We will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Girlfriend, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'm so honored you come back every week and that you share the Fit Soul podcast with your friends and family. Every time you share my podcast on Instagram or Facebook, I do a little happy dance. Make sure you subscribe to the Fit Soul podcast where you'll never miss an episode. You can go to Podcast, Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode release. And just know, I truly love bringing you excellent content and great guests to provide you motivation and faith inspiration to help you walk worthy. And one of the ways you can help me is to go and leave the Fit Soul podcast a review. If you have just a moment, would you please go over and leave a review for the Fit Soul podcast? Thank you again. I love you. And here is your reminder. You are worthy. Until next time. Bye-bye.